PlayStation is easily one of the most recognizable consoles ever in the past 30 years at this point. But with success comes great downfall with certain consoles. The console I'm talking about today is the PlayStation 3, a console that is fantastic, absolutely amazing, with lots of great games. Especially these days, if you want a game on a budget. I know I'm doing another one of these videos. It's not a gaming on a budget sort of thing, more of a recommendation about the PS3 and what games to play, that sort of thing. But getting a bit of history of it, the PS3 came out in 2006. I know, 20 years old this year, in the year 2026. But it started off on a rocky start because, for one, the console was very expensive for the time. I mean, I think it was like $600 US at the time in 2006, which was a lot of money. Mind you, it was still the cheapest Blu-ray player on the market at the time, which I think they were trying to do that. They were trying to make lightning strike twice with the case of the PlayStation 2, where it was a very, very, very cheap DVD player at the time. They tried to do it again with the PS3, but unfortunately it didn't work because $600 for a video game console is very steep. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I think we can all say that $600 or 600 quid for a gaming console is very steep, and some would disagree with me these days. I would still agree that it's very hefty sum to pay for a video game console. When these days you get asked to pay that much, you might as well build a PC. But even then, that's becoming an unviable option these days. But digressions aside, the PS3 launched in 2006. It was off to a rocky start with the Xbox 360 releasing a year prior. With its although the 360 had its problems with its red ring of death, the PS3 had its fair share of problems too. But the main problem with the PS3 is that it didn't have enough compelling games when it first came out in 2006, and that's where the Xbox 360 was leading in the market. Because when the PS3 came out, Gears of War 1, sorry, came out, and it was mind-blowing. And to this day, if you go back and play Gears of War, the original, it's still pretty mind-blowing. I would say Sony didn't really build momentum with their game library until about 2007, 2008, where we had the first Uncharted, we had Metal Gear Solid 4. I wouldn't say too much about games yet because I've got to get into that later. But the games started to come eventually. But from a technical standpoint, the PS3, it's a better console in terms of like tech specs and that sort of thing. I mean, it was the first console to do 1080p full HD, which sounds quite laughable today. But you have to bear in mind the Xbox 360 didn't ship with a HDMI port. The PS3 did. Although, bear in mind, in 2006, not many people had 1080p displays. But I think Sony kind of future-proofed with their console with the PS3 with an HDMI port, whereas the 360 only went up to 1080i at the time, using component out cables, that sort of thing. And they wouldn't remedy this issue until about 2008 with the 360. But Sony were like, nope, we're going to bring out a console with HDMI, full backwards compatibility with the PS2 and the PS1. Not the model I've got, by the way. I've got the Super Slim. But they wanted it to make it this all-in-one sort of entertainment system, which is kind of a red flag these days when you say that about a console. But back then, people were like, oh, okay, it was the same with the PSP as well, which, in terms of UI, very similar. Yeah, when the PS3 launched, a lot of people were a bit negative about it, but I knew a fair amount of people who had a PlayStation 3 when it was new, when I was at secondary school. It was kind of like a healthy mix. Many people had 360s, other people had PS3s. I had a 360 first when it was new. I didn't get a PS3 until the end, like midway 2013, because I wanted it for The Last of Us. Because to be honest, I wasn't really that interested in the PlayStation 3. Whereas now, as someone who likes to play older games, yeah, absolutely, because it's so cheap to buy games for the system. Of course, there are outliers. There are always outliers in terms of pricing of games, but the PS3 in terms of like picking up games is great. The first thing you'll notice with the PS3 when you boot up is the clean UI. It's very clean. It uses the PSP XMB UI, which was a bit laggy on the PSP, but still ran at like 60 FPS. But this is in a full like 1080p, 60 frames per second. It scrolls beautifully across and just feels smooth. And Sony never really, I don't know, they didn't change it at all. If you correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't have a PS3 from you, but did they ever change this that dramatically as the years went on? Let me know down below. But they never really changed the UI for the PS3. Microsoft, on the other hand, changed the Xbox 360 dashboard almost like it felt like every 5 minutes. I don't know why they never stuck with the Blades dashboard. It's not too dissimilar to like to this, where you switch from different tabs on a whim. But yeah, the PS3, fantastic. It's an absolutely fantastic console. And sorry for the long intro, but in today's video, I want to go over the different models, some game recommendations, and all that sort of thing. And in 2026, I feel like a PS3 is a good option to pick up these days because, as I've gone on before, banged on, old man yelling at the sky sort of thing. Uh, games have gotten too expensive, and games from the past are just more fulfilling. So are consoles. They're more fulfilling. They don't waste your time. They just let you play without metaphorically trying to rob you on the side of the road. So let's get into the ins and outs of the hardware and the games. So let's start with the hardware first. Let's go into that section first. So the PlayStation 3, as I already said, came out in 2006, which came out with the uniformly dubbed FAT model, which this model was really good. It's quite hard to find these days in terms of like it working, because like the Xbox 360 when it came out, the PS3 had a myriad of problems at launch due to overheating, like the motherboard not being soldered on, or the soldering coming off the motherboard, that sort of thing. The main problem with the PS3 with the launch title was the PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility. And the way they got it to work was basically they just put a PlayStation 2 into the PS3, which of course, when you've got too much inside of an enclosed space, it causes heat issues. If you're lucky to get one to work, it's fantastic because it's all fully hardware emulation. It's not software emulation, which they would later go on to change with the later models of the fat PS3 to make it software emulation, which was unreliable with results of how PlayStation 2 games would act. But it's a great model. As I said, you get one working, you can find one for cheap. By the way, these models, they're not cheap these days because, of course, you play PS1, PS2, PS3. It's a great all-in-one PlayStation like system because you can play your classics from the PS1 era and, of course, the PS2 era. Just a disclaimer, all PlayStation 3 games can play PS1 discs. So if you're wondering, like, which one can play PS1 discs, they all play PS1 discs, and some of them can have varying results, but they all play PlayStation 1 discs, so you're kind of set there if you're looking to go back and revisit some classics on disc. The PS1 is one of my favorite libraries of all time. I grew up with it in the late 90s. I've got a few over there, so I'm pointing towards there. They might come up in my game recommendations section. I don't know, but mostly I'm just going to be recommending PS3 games here, which will be in the next section. Yeah, the fat model was incredible value for what it is at the time, and probably not so much these days because, as I said, it's quite expensive to acquire. But just note, if you plan on getting the original fat model, it's incredibly unreliable and prone to overheating and shutting down, the yellow light of death, as it were. But it's great. As I said, all PS3 models are backwards compatible with PlayStation 1 discs, so it's great because you've got loads of memory card storage in terms of like saving your games, that sort of thing. And the PS3, the online's still up, as you can tell behind me. Who knows how much that will last this year? There is inklings of it shutting down this year, but I'm going by rumor and speculation. Yeah, up next is the Slim model, which came out around 2010, I believe, late 2009, early 2010. This is probably, in terms of the PlayStation 3 system as it on its own, the best version of the PS3 because it's small, it's quiet, and it got rid of all the problems from the original PS3 with the overheating, because unfortunately there is no PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility of any kind with this model, and that's how they were able to alleviate the overheating issues. But if you're just looking to play PlayStation 3 games, PS1 games, perfect model, slips into a small entertainment center perfectly, although don't leave it in there if you're playing it. Get it out, of course. Yeah, fantastic. Not the model I've got, unfortunately. My brother had one of those back in the day, and they're just great. It's got a smooth disk drive. You just slide it in. Very quiet compared to the original model, and just overall, and it's very cheap to pick up these models too. The Slim. Up next is the unfortunate version I've got, is the Super Slim, which I bought in mid 2013 secondhand for about 90 quid, which was quite cheap compared to the other models at the time. I bought it purely because it had a 500 gigabyte hard drive in it. This is easily probably the most disliked model, the Super Slim, because of how cheaply made it is. I'll show some B-roll of it in a minute. Just how cheaply made it is. It has a flap to put the disc in that you push the button. or if it wears over time, you have to kind of like slide it to the side of your hand because it's so badly made. The disc tray, as it were, um, it's just so poorly made. And the only reason most people probably bought it because, as I said, the top end models came with 500 gig hard drives, which is more than enough storage than you need for a PlayStation 3 if you're using it for legitimate means. Um, yeah, it's not a good model, but again, I bought it because of how cheap it was. The controller for the PS3, probably my least favorite. This is not an official controller that I've got, by the way, because the controllers on the PS3 were quite prone to failure as well. They weren't that well made. They were quite shoddily made. They felt too light too. They felt like you could have snapped them in your hands. This is a third-party one I bought. I think it was last year. Yeah, last year, off of Amazon. It feels probably just as flimsy as the PS3. It feels too light. The triggers are never really that good because if you play most FPS games on the PS3, they generally map the aim down sights and the fire button to the L1 and R1 buttons because the triggers, they're not very good compared to the Xbox 360 or later PlayStation consoles like the PS4 and the PS5. It just feels very flimsy to use, and when you're playing FPS games again, very sensitive with camera control. Yeah, every time I play an FPS game, I played Medal of Honor 2010 on the PS3 last year when I found it in a charity shop. I had to turn the sensitivity right down because it's way too sensitive on the PS3 compared to when I played on the Xbox 360 back in the day. For other games like driving games, adventure games, action games, that sort of thing, it's fine. It does its job. But if you want to play first-person shooters, then the PS3 controller is not the best to use. You can connect PlayStation 4 controllers to the PS3, but again, it's a cumbersome situation to get it working, and it doesn't always work properly with certain games. Like I noticed in Metal Gear Solid 4 when using a PS4 controller, Snake doesn't run diagonally properly, he walks instead because obviously the axes haven't been set up properly on the analog sticks for the PS4 and the PS3. Motion controls don't work with PS4 controllers, and you can't go back home. The home button doesn't work, so you have to keep a PS3 controller handy even if you're using a PS4 controller. It's just a pain in the ass. But there are third-party solutions. You can look them up to use different types of controllers through modding and all that sort of thing, which I would recommend if you can get a controller that's better than the PS3's with motion control 6-axis design. And that's the other thing that Sony introduced was 6-axis with its controller. Originally, it was just called the 6-axis. It didn't have any vibration in it. They claimed it was not the future of gaming at the time, which was an excuse because they were in a bit of a scrap with the manufacturer with vibration motors. That was all cleared up. Then they eventually released the DualShock 3, which was the controller throughout the generation, which has motion controls, which was just kind of the norm at the time because of Nintendo with its Wii. Some games use them on Sony's platform with like the exclusives. Other games do not. It's more of a gimmick more than anything, to be honest. Like turning valve handles in Killzone 2, which was just like what, that sort of thing. It was a fun gimmick, but it just got irritating by the end of it, and fewer games stopped using it. Like in Uncharted 1, where you had to balance on a beam by balancing the controller, or arcing a grenade by lifting the controller up when you threw a grenade. It was just stupid, which even Naughty Dog got rid of all that stuff later on. But yeah, the controller's not my favorite on this platform. And yeah, there's 3 models of the PS3. As I said, I recommend if you just want to play PlayStation 3, PS1 games, get the Super Slim. It's reliable, cheap, and just overall just a well-designed model. The Fat is great if you could find one working for a decent price, but just bear in mind that they're unreliable. They break down quite often. But enough about hardware. Let's get into the game, shall we? So on to the game recommendations now. I've got a little pile here to recommend to you. These are all exclusive to the platform. None of them got a re-release on PS4 or PS5. Not that I think they did. No, they didn't. And these are just all exclusive games that you need to have on your platform if you're going to pick up a PS3. And yeah, these are all very cheap too. I think like all these are like below a tenner at least. And first up is Little Big Planet 1 and 2. These games are fantastic. Easily one of my favorite 2D style platformers. And they're just absolutely charming. They're both narrated by the legendary Stephen Fry. Just the music's great, made by who's it made by? Media Molecule, and they don't really do much at the moment, to my knowledge. I wish Sony would bring back Little Big Planet, and I know they briefly kind of experimented with the character with having Sackboy's Big Adventure on PS5, but I would love for them to come back and do a full-fledged Little Big Planet game, because we haven't had one since 2014 with Little Big Planet 3, which was a cross-generation game on the PlayStation 3 and the PS4. Just a charming 2D platforming game, not too complex, but the level editor quite in depth, quite elaborate. Seeing all the creations back in the day from different creators on YouTube who just put videos up of their different levels where people were making like different game modes almost. It's like a Mario Maker before Mario Maker was a thing. Very advanced for the era, and it's a shame you can't access any more of these creations because the servers are shut down. But if you're looking for some platforming action, you can't go wrong with Little Big Planet 1 and 2. On to first-person shooters. I mentioned first-person shooters being a pain in the ass to play on PS3, and these ones aren't so much. It took me a while to kind of get back into it when I captured some footage for this video. Killzone 2 and 3, easily two of the best FPS games on the platform, especially Killzone 2, 2009, and the game still looks amazing. It looks like a modern game still. The visuals are incredible. I wish these would get a modern re-release, get like a remaster on like PS5, just port them in like 4K and 60 frames per second with more modern controls, and they would still hold up incredibly well. Yeah, still a bit cumbersome to play these games because, as I said, PlayStation 3 FPS games, bit of a pain in the backside to play, but they added some sort of nuance to these games where you could crouch with like, because the way I set up the controls, because you can tailor the controls to your liking. Like you can pull like L2 to crouch behind cover and use L1 and R1 to aim and fire, which is the best way to play the game, to be honest. Having the sort of pseudo cover mechanic in an FPS game was kind of different at the time, because usually you would just press the crouch button behind a wall and just pop out when you can. Whereas Killzone 2 and 3, you could lean outside of walls, over pillars, that sort of thing. And it worked surprisingly well. The shooting's meaty, it's heavy, it's cumbersome. You really feel like you're in a war zone, and the sound effects just hold up supremely well. I can't speak today. Yeah. Onto racing games. One racing game here. I've got other racing games in this pile here, which you probably know what it is. Either series. I've only got one in this series here, and that's Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo 5. This game, I remember, took a very long time to come out on PlayStation 3 because we had the prologue come out beforehand, which I think was 2008. I think 2007, 2008, the GT5 prologue came out, and I remember this game being in development for years. The prologue came out when I was in secondary school, when I was about 14, 15. The full-fledged game came out in 2010 when I was studying my A-levels, nearly at 18 years old. It doesn't sound long, but it's quite long in those sort of years. Yeah, Gran Turismo 5, lots of game here, lots of cars, and I think this is either this or GT6 has the most cars in the series. Let me know down below. I can't remember off the top of my head. Great career mode, great career progression, visually spectacular for a 2010 PS3 game. Controls really well, buttery smooth, and the detail on the cars is just absolutely amazing. I wouldn't expect anything less from Gran Turismo. It's just a great franchise. I don't drive a car, but I love racing games. It sounds really stupid and weird, but I really like racing games, but I don't drive a car. I don't know how to drive a car either. I'm a cyclist, sorry. But yeah, Gran Turismo 5, really good game. Absolutely essential racing game. 2 open world adventure games. Hang on, I've got my pile wrong here. 2 open world adventure games here from Sucker Punch Studios, who you will probably know more these days for the Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei games. They first had their not their first foray, because they made the Sly Cooper games, but this was their new IP on the PS3, Infamous. Think of these as superhero games when superhero games weren't particularly good, with a few exceptions, where you could just fly around the city with different powers, electricity powers that Cole's got. They did release a third game on the PS4, which was really good, Second Son, but these two are like the pinnacle of the series, especially the second game here. Yeah, they're just classic open world games before open world games just got oversaturated in the market. They look great. It has like a good and evil path, which have genuine consequences, where your superpowers will evolve with your good or evil decisions. Sometimes it's just as cynical as you have blue lightning or you have red lightning, but also you get some powers which are like how would you put it, morally objectionable. But yeah, Infamous is fantastic. Here's a few other racing games in a series that I wish Sony would just bring back, and that's the MotorStorm games. MotorStorm Pacific Rift, and MotorStorm Apocalypse. They released a MotorStorm game on the PSP as well, called, what was it called? Arctic Rift. But yeah, these games are great. Think of it as like you take off-road racing, but you put the chaos and crashes of Burnout into it, where you see people flying off their motorcycles and in slow motion, all the sort of shrapnel flying goodness. Fantastic games. They can be quite difficult sometimes because of how fragile your cars is and how fragile you are on a motorbike. Apocalypse is quite good because they added in apocalyptic themes to the game, where the levels would shapeshift and change on each lap. So it's like the road would fall apart, or that bridge isn't active anymore. I like that because it adds a bit more sort of unpredictability to races, not too dissimilar to what Split Second did, where you could blow up a building and knock people off. But yeah, the MotorStorm game's absolutely superb, and the final exclusive, which hopefully won't be exclusive with the rumblings what's going on at Konami at the moment, is Metal Gear Solid 4. My favorite game in the series. I know that's quite a controversial take, but Metal Gear Solid 4 was a great ending to the franchise. It should have ended there, but it didn't, because of course it didn't. Yeah, this game's quite notorious for having extremely long cutscenes. I'm not kidding, extremely long cutscenes. I think the ending's like 90 minutes long, if I remember correctly. But it wraps up everything in the Metal Gear saga with Solid Snake being an old man due to accelerating aging. The story, despite the cutscenes being really long, it hooks you from start to finish, and it's just absolutely amazing. And for a game from 2008, still looks amazing. I mean, 2008 was a great year. You had Gears of War 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, Fable 2, Grand Theft Auto 4, Devil May Cry 4, all sorts. I'm probably missing a few. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid 4, again, it's shot up a bit in price because obviously people have been talking about it, but not too expensive. Yeah, it's just superb, and I wish it would be ported to modern consoles. And there's people saying that it's quite difficult to do, which I could see why, but hey. But that's me rambling about the PS3 and the games. And yeah, the PS3, just what a console. What a console. It's just so good. And if you're gaming on a budget and you want an HD game console on a budget, it's an easy pickup, to be honest, because games are cheap, the hardware's cheap, of course, depending which hardware you get. But the PS3 is great. And yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. Thank you for tuning in for my first video of 2026. I hope you all had a great New Year, Christmas, because I've filmed this and uploaded it after the New Year. So yeah, hope you all have a great 26. And I'm looking forward to my YouTube journey this year. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. See you later. Bye.